think the current IDF strategy in the Gaza Strip has likely reached its limit. So meaning that what the IDF has done, whether eliminating commanders, eliminating terrorist infrastructure, I think this strategy, all right, has achieved this goal. I think what President Trump wants here, and of course, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu, is the Abraham Accords, for more countries to join it. That certainly is a possibility, but I don't think it will happen until there's a permanent end to the war in Gaza. That this continuing the war will endanger the lives of the hostages, not only because, of course, they're being held in appalling conditions, but they may be a victim of the fighting, whether it's a Hamas rocket or an Israeli airstrike.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu was in Washington, D.C., even at the time when Israeli actions continued in Gaza. What is the situation on the ground in Gaza? How is the United States of America looking at this war? And what happens to the Israeli-US combine when it comes to the larger war in the region? To discuss all this and more, I'm being joined by Joe Truzman. He's Senior Research Analyst and Editor at Long War Journal. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Beginning with the Israeli action in Gaza, on a day that there were meetings that were being held between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump, we saw continued action in Gaza. Is that a stated policy for Israel, and a ceasefire talks for a halt or holding fire does not look like a feasible option right now?
Right. Thank you for having me on. I think right now, the current environment in Gaza, yes, the IDF is continuing to attack Hamas targets and those belonging to other Palestinian terrorist organizations. However, I will say that I think the current IDF strategy in the Gaza Strip has likely reached its limit. So meaning that what the IDF has done, whether eliminating commanders, eliminating terrorist infrastructure, I think this strategy, all right, has achieved this goal. However, there are still hostages in Gaza, and the IDF has only been able to retrieve a handful of them over the last month. So yes, the IDF is continuing to operate in the Gaza Strip. However, with Prime Minister Netanyahu visiting President Trump, all the indications show that Israel and the United States are ready to wrap this war up. Now they just have to figure out the details.
Well, again, in terms of strategy, you're saying that they've achieved their goals, but it doesn't seem like the Israeli administration, Prime Minister Netanyahu, seems to agree. Do you think there is a difference in how DC is viewing the situation and how Tel Aviv is looking at the situation on the ground?
Right. So I would say that I think the IDF has partially achieved its goals. However, I think that the biggest two goals, right, of course, retrieving the hostages, getting the hostages back. And of course, the other one is dismantling Hamas's infrastructure. Israel does not want to see Hamas govern the Gaza Strip after this war is over. Now, the problem is that I don't think those two chief goals, those two primary goals, are compatible, meaning that you can't, if Israel wants all the hostages, they are likely going to be compelled or forced to allow Hamas to continue governing the Gaza Strip. And I think the decision makers in DC, especially President Trump, understands this, all right, and sees that Hamas is likely to continue governing the Gaza Strip, and that the IDF has reached at least most of its goals, has achieved most of the goals that it set out for itself at the beginning of the war. So I think President Trump sees this. I think that's one of the reasons why Prime Minister Netanyahu is in DC right now, to get this ceasefire together. So I think they're on this, both sides are on the same page here, which is good news. Now, again, it boils down to the details. And of course, if Hamas accepts a ceasefire deal.
Well, Joe, as somebody from the think tankers clique, or associated to people who are looking at watching Palestine and the Israel situation very, very closely, how do you see the strategy of Israel at this point in time? We know that they're looking at elimination of Hamas, but with that, we're also looking at a lot of civilian deaths. And while they talk about these civilians being used as human shields, civilians are not even allowed to leave Gaza Strip. So in all this dichotomy, what's your reading? How are you looking at the situation where people are not allowed to leave Gaza and yet they're being called human shields?
Right. It is a difficult situation. I think this has been going on not only in this war, of course. This has been an issue with civilians for more than 2 decades, really. I mean, since at least Hamas came into power since the late 80s. So this is a problem the Israelis have had to face and of course, Palestinian civilians. The problem is that Hamas leverages the civilians, all right? They build infrastructure, military infrastructure. They deliberately build this infrastructure within the confines of civilian homes and hospitals. So this is a huge problem for the Israelis. It's very difficult to avoid civilian casualties here. One can almost say that it is impossible. But of course, it's the Palestinian civilians that have to suffer through this. Nevertheless, I think the real blame here is Hamas for doing employing this type of strategy. All right, they're very good at it. They've been doing this for a very long time. Nevertheless, I think I think this is another reason why a ceasefire is so important. All right, and what's very important to mention here is that this is only if there's a ceasefire. It's only technically for 60 days. This will only be a cessation of hostilities to give negotiators time, all right, to permanently end the war. So technically, this doesn't mean that the war is over if there's a ceasefire agreement here. So this is a very important note. But I think it will bring relief to the civilians in the Gaza Strip. I think more aid will come in as well. I think this is what is a part of the negotiations here. But nevertheless, I think both parties here, or rather at least the United States and Israel, I think they do want to see an end to the war here. Now, again, I go back to it. It's the details that matter.
Well, absolutely. But what you're seeing as, somebody who's been reading the subject, knows the lay of the land in many ways than one, the Hamas, Joe, in many ways was created or was propped up or was even allowed to be in Gaza to undermine Mahmoud Abbas in West Bank. Today we see a divided Palestine. Most Palestinians never agreed with the Hamas, never wanted the Hamas, and there was aid going into Gaza with the Hamas in control. Today everybody is suffering at the hands of the Hamas in the region. And nobody paid attention to it, not the United States of America, not Israel, when it was convenient.
I think at least at the beginning when Hamas emerged in the Gaza Strip, again, back when I said earlier in the late 80s, yes, I think Israel should have paid more attention to it, all right? You can fault Israel for that, the Israeli authorities back then, all right? Absolutely.
They wanted to undermine Mahmoud Abbas. They just wanted the person in control of Palestine undermined.
There certainly is a possibility, and now we're seeing we're possibly seeing the effects of it, and that's a problem. I think this is what Israel has struggled with for so many years. All right, you have on one side here in the Gaza Strip, of course, you have a powerful group or network of Palestinian terrorist groups led by Hamas. On the other hand, you have the Palestinian Authority and some terrorist groups that belong to Hamas and other Palestinian terrorist organizations in the West Bank. So Israel is, you can say, it's almost surrounded in this case. So nevertheless, I think Israel has mitigated or tried to resolve this problem. But again, it's been a contentious issue, a continuous issue too for them, with honestly, with no end in sight.
You made a very important point, Joe, when you said that this would only be cessation of fire, not a complete peace, that you'd be seeing a lasting peace in the region. What's the way forward?
Right. And I think this current ceasefire deal, right, that Hamas and Israel are trying to put together here, of course, with the help of mediators, or whether it's the United States or Qatar or Egypt, I think there's a broader strategy at play here. All right. What I mean by that is specifically, I'm talking about the Abraham Accords. All right. We have, there's possibly Syria may join. Of course, there's the crown jewel, which would be Saudi Arabia, but I don't think that can happen without two main things. Without a permanent end to the war in Gaza, and of course, for Israel to recognize a pathway to a Palestinian state. I think those are two big conditions for the Saudis to join. But again, I think this is all part of a broader strategy here, this ceasefire deal. I think what President Trump wants here, and of course, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu, is the Abraham Accords for more countries to join it. That certainly is a possibility, but I don't think it will happen until there's a permanent end to the war in Gaza.
Again, a very, very important point, but how are strategists and thinkers in DC looking at the situation? Because there have been protests after protests to at least stop killing of civilians. More than 15,000 children dead. That's appalling. We can talk about proportionality, Joe, but somewhere down the line, Netanyahu will have to answer for this, because even political parties and leaders and former prime ministers of Israel are questioning the method and the action, Israeli action in Gaza.
Right. No, I completely understand. I think we would have to wait till the end of the war, all right, to get a clear picture of exactly what happened, the casualty count. Again, a lot of this information it comes from Hamas's health ministry. So effectively, news organizations, governments, and so on, they're getting their information from Hamas. Now, I'm not saying it's completely incorrect either. So I think what we need to do, what needs to be done, of course, is an investigation, or at least to at least wait until to get a clearer picture or understanding of the casualty count, of course, after the war is over. But nevertheless, I think the consensus in DC among political circles or among think tankers is that it's probably time to end the war here. Again, we think, at least, and what I've observed is that the IDF has likely reached its limits, all right, as far as what it can do. It cannot endanger the lives of the hostages in Gaza. And I think that's paramount here. So I think a ceasefire deal is important here. The sooner, the better, not only for the hostages, of course, but for Palestinian civilians and for the region.
Again, in terms of the hostages, we're only hoping the ones who have survived this month after month bombing should return home safely. But many of them could. What's your understanding and reading? Many of them could have themselves been or must have fallen victim to Israeli action. Is that something that has been considered?
Yes, it's possible. I think there have been hostages that have said already that, for example, on a couple of occasions, or maybe more, I can't recall correctly, but that their lives were in danger due to fighting. All right, whether it was airstrikes, for example, near Hamas positions where they were located. So yes, that's the big argument. That's one of the main arguments in Israel right now, for example. That this continuing the war will endanger the lives of the hostages, not only because, of course, they're being held in appalling conditions, but they may be a victim of the fighting, whether it's a Hamas rocket or an Israeli airstrike. So this is the important part here, I think, or one of the main arguments to end the war, to get a ceasefire and negotiate a permanent end to this conflict. Because again, there's 20 hostages that are believed to be alive, 30 more that unfortunately are deceased, but they must be taken back or must be repatriated back to Israel. I think that's very important. But as long as the war goes on, I do think it's a correct assessment, or at least a good assessment, that it does endanger the lives of the hostages as long as there is fighting.
The role of the United States of America, Joe, the president has been very, very clear that there needs to be ceasefire, this indiscriminate killing should stop, and DC has a role to play. They are looking at, and this could be a major achievement for President Trump. But is there political will over here, or is there a lack of political will in pushing Netanyahu to stop, or getting both the sides to a talking table? Because to the talking table, because it does seem like if President Trump really puts his foot down, there is precious little that Netanyahu can do.
Yeah, I do think there is political will. I think we talked about it earlier. There is a strategy here. There's a broader strategy. I think President Trump, for instance, he has several goals in mind here, right? Foreign policy goals. That's the ceasefire in Gaza, of course, and a permanent end to the war, getting the hostages back. But also, of course, I think it's the Abraham Accords, all right, and as well, something we haven't talked about is a nuclear deal with Iran. So I think these are all related here. Okay. So, but again, I don't think you can get the Abraham Accords or nations to join the Abraham Accords until there's a ceasefire in Gaza. So you can't have that. You can't have both, I think. President Trump has made it clear that he wants these goals. He wants to achieve all these goals that I mentioned. So I think when the time comes, and I think we're already seeing it, by the way, he can put pressure on Prime Minister Netanyahu, all right, to get that ceasefire deal in Gaza so they can move on to the Abraham Accords. They can move on to the Iran deal. So all of this is very important. But I do think there is political will here. But President Trump has given Netanyahu a lot of leeway, but I think that will change soon if there isn't a ceasefire deal in the coming days and weeks.
So you really think so? You think the leeway and the room, the elbow room that was given, accorded to Prime Minister Netanyahu, that could change?
I think so. I think because again, President Trump has made it clear. All right, he's made it clear that what he wants out of this. When he's said it in front of the camera, and I do believe him. So I think that there comes to a point where if Trump has to, he will put his foot down. All right, but I don't think it will get to that. All right, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu sees the writing on the wall. He needs to make every effort to make a ceasefire deal. I think that's why he's in D.C. right now too.
Okay, and finally, before I let you go, Joe, the larger picture, because you also cover and watch, you keenly monitor Iran and the region. So my question to you, because you spoke about the Abraham Accords. Now, in the Abraham Accords, we have Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, very important Arab leaders and Arab countries. Do you think after what has happened, after what Israel has done, morally or ideologically, politically, geostrategically, that these countries can ever be a part of what President Trump and it is President Trump's baby, what President Trump really wanted to do, bring this entire region together, align them with Israel and America. Do you think after this, they can be seen aligning with Israel at all? Some of these major Arab leaders.
Yes, that's a big risk I think President Trump is taking. Is it even possible to do this? Listen, I think there has been a lot of talk and communication and relationships between, let's say, Israel and Arab countries or and Arab countries behind the scenes over many years, actually. So I think a lot of people didn't believe that, for example, the UAE would join the Abraham Accords, for example, or members of the UAE. So it's I think there's a lot that is possible here. Now, I do think it's a little bit I wouldn't say far-fetched, but I don't think they can get as many countries to get on board, Arab countries to get on board the Abraham Accords right away. But the thing is, and I think this is what Hamas fears, I think this is what Iran fears, that what has happened, what is happening now, and what has happened in the last few years is a domino effect, all right? So you get one country, a couple of countries to join the Abraham Accords, all right? And then others begin to follow, all right? And then that trend continues over the years. Then you get the Saudis to join, all right? That would be a huge win for the United States, a huge win for the Israelis. And then more countries join. So I don't think, again, it's not all going to happen at once, but I would view it as a domino effect. I think that's what we're seeing right now, or observing. That's what's happening. Now, if you could ever get countries like, let's say, Iran to join the Abraham Accords, now that's probably unlikely anytime soon. But nevertheless, I think what we're seeing, again, it's a domino effect. It takes time, but so far it seems to be working, all right? But again, time will tell, time will show at least who will join the Abraham Accords. Again, maybe Syria, maybe Lebanon. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, you spoke of Iran, so let's just touch upon what is happening right now. Now, from where I see things, it's not a lost war for the other side. In fact, if anything, Israel will have to see how it's going to, given that it's surrounded by countries that are hostile to it, it will have to look at how it aligns itself, realigns, makes a few compromises, because you have Yemen, the Houthis. They might be pounding them in some places, but they've still not been able to secure the Red Sea, and that's where they dominate. You have Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, a country that, again, is still standing strong despite all the sanctions and despite the attacks on the nuclear plants. At the end of the day, we could be looking at a conversation between DC and Tehran. That, again, is important. And then you have the entire Arab world, which you just explained. So how will this work? A nuclear conversation between DC and Tehran, which might not go down very well with Tel Aviv.
Right, that's a big issue. I think that's what makes the Israelis nervous, and I think that's another reason why Prime Minister Netanyahu is in town. All right, to discuss, I think in part at least, to discuss the nuclear deal with President Trump. Nevertheless, I do think it's a new Middle East. All right, especially after this war. Now, some threats continue to remain. All right, as you mentioned, the Houthis in Yemen, but Iran, yes, Iran is I think is the chief foe here of Israel, and whether whether Tehran has been compelled to abandon its nuclear ambitions, we don't know yet. Of course, that is the goal. That's what the Israelis want. But now, from what we've seen and what we've heard from Iranian officials, it doesn't seem that they have abandoned this issue, right? This aspiration to become a nuclear state, a nuclear armed state. Nevertheless, I think things can change at the negotiating table behind the scenes, of course. But I think for this to happen, the Israelis need a strong United States, all right, at the negotiating table. But also, I think these strikes in Iran, this war that lasted 12 days, I think what happened here is it created a significant leverage for the United States and, of course, Israel at the negotiating table with the Iranians. Effectively, what the messaging here from the United States is: listen, you can make a deal with us. That's the best thing you can do. Or if you continue to pursue your nuclear ambitions, we've already demonstrated, and of course the Israelis have as well, that we can attack these facilities. So I think the Iranians understand this. I think the Iranians do want to make a deal here. Now, I think it's up to both parties here, specifically, again, Iran and the United States, to get together here and hammer out details that will work. But again, it may not work for the Israelis, and that's going to be a problem they may have to live with. But again, we don't know yet.
Okay, very interesting, but and brilliant perspective, Joe. To me, I think the only positive and a huge setback for Iran and a great positive for Israel and the United States of America at this point in time is the fall of Assad's regime. Although Trump might like to differ if you look at his past statements on Assad, but that's a plus because that is a country now whose soil cannot be used against Israel by Iran. Apart from that, everything is up in the air. We'll have to wait and see how the negotiations with Iran go, as also what happens when Netanyahu is asked to stop. But you made a very important point when you said IDF has done what it had to do in Gaza. The war has to come to an end. Joe Truzman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.